Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from MA Bilingual Muslimat NU Sidoarjo. Proudly present Module of Biology about the scope of biology, scientific method, and work safety in laboratory. أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. And with those who even do not know that the heaven and the earth were both unified, then we separate them, and from water we make everything alive. Then why don't they also believe? Now, let's start to learn about the scope of biology, scientific method, and work safety in laboratory.
Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about the scope of biology in terms of scientific method and the work safety. Here's the outline for our topic today. The first, we will learn about the biological understanding. What is biology? The second, the benefits of biology. The reason why we have to study biology. The third is the characteristics of biology as a science. The fourth, the scope of biology, the objects of biological and organizational studies of life. The fifth is branches of biology, and the last, scientific method and the work safety. So without further waiting, let's go to the first topic, the biological understanding. Before we go further about our discussion today, firstly, I would like to ask you, do you know what is biology? Biology is the words come from bios and logos. Bios or bio, it means life, and logos, it means knowledge. So the biology basically is the study of living things and life related to living things, including the environment. After we know the basic understanding about biology, which is bios and logos, we should know the reason why we have to study biology. And it will answer by discussing the benefits of biology. Firstly, do you ever think why we have to study biology? What's the importance of biology? Okay, let me answer the question. As we know, that biology is a knowledge that learned about living things and life related to living things itself. Biology will affect our daily life, ranging from our relationship with the environment, the food that we consume, the disease that can attack our bodies, and so on. By understanding biology, we hope we can understand ourselves and the lives around us. We can solve various problems, and we will be more wise towards our environment. And for the next slide, there will be some types of biological benefits in our life. The very example of the biological benefit is in agriculture sectors. The discovery of superior seeds and suitable fertilization patterns can increase the agricultural production. As we know that for agriculture, we need to give fertilizer, we need to give nutrients. What is that? That's biology. It's learn about the living things and the life related with the living things. Could you imagine how if we don't know about biology? And the next, through genetic engineering, can be created types of cultivation plants that are able to produce their own insecticides, such as apples, pears, cabbage, broccoli, potatoes, fruit without seeds like watermelon, papaya, oranges, grapes. That's all make the human's life is easier. And through superior plant tissue culture techniques, it can be cultivated or propagated in a short time, like palm oil, orchids, bananas, and carrots. See? Do you still remember what is biology? It's about living things and life related to living things. The other example is in biotechnology sector. Utilization of several types of microorganisms in the food industry. It makes the food produced is durable, has a preferred taste like sweet, sour, and then spicy, and has economic value. Example, nata de coco, bread, cheese, tempeh, tape, soy sauce, wine, and others. That's all about biological things that we learn. The role of biology in medical field is very important. For example, the biological methods of transplantation, how we can transplant someone's organs toward the other people that has damage or dysfunction of their organs. The second, with the study of viruses or virology, that helps human to create various vaccines from the virus itself. The third is IVF technique, that helps couples who do not have children to inseminate the ovarium and the sperm outside the uterus. Medical microbiology has succeeded in finding various kinds of antibiotics for various types of bacteria that can cause disease. Another biological benefit comes from the livestock sector. As we know, with the anatomy and physiology knowledge of animals that found, we can make insemination techniques or injection mating. It aims to get the livestock with the good quality and increase the production rate so that we will have the livestock better. For the in vitro fertilization technique, the superior livestock embryos are produced outside the uterus in a certain amount and stored for a certain period of time in liquid nitrogen with a temperature of 189 degrees Celsius. Then it can be implanted into non-superior female parent of the same species so that many superior livestock will be obtained quickly. Do you see how biology helped the human's life? Moving on to our fourth topic, the characteristic of biology as a science. Yes, biology is the science of life. As we know, it's learned about living things and life related to living thing itself. There are four characteristics of biology as a science. 1. The object of study in the form of concrete objects. 2. Based on empirical experience and the results of the study are universal. 3. it is using logical thinking. 4. Examine using the scientific method, and the results of the study are objective. The scope of biology, which will discuss about the objects of biological and organizational studies of life. Biological object, or we know as 5 kingdoms. It's about Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Protists, and Monera. The objects of biology are all living things, from the level of atoms, molecules, cells, tissue, organs, individual, population, ecosystem, and biomes. And in this part, we will discuss about the organizational studies of life. As I mentioned before, all the living things comes from the molecules. Molecules is the smallest thing that is complex inside the living things, such as nucleic acid or genetic materials like DNA and RNA, proteins, carbohydrates, fats or lipids, and also vitamins. And moving on to the next, the molecules will form cell organelles. That is, organelles constituent parts of the cells composed of various organic molecules that will have various functions, and they will have various relation each other. The cell organelles will form a cell. The cell level of life organization is the smallest structural and functional unit of living things. The next organizational studies of life is tissues. Some cells that have the same form and function, they will make a pattern with the same function and they will form tissues. And the next, the same tissues that have a certain role will form an organs. Each organ has a function to support the life of a living thing. The existence of organs make living things have a physiological function on the condition of their environment. And the next is organ system. Organ system is a system consists of various organs that are arranged together to form certain systems that interact each other. The next is individual. Individual is a unit of living things that complexly arranged with various body organ systems that support one another. As we know, for example, human have some organ system like digestion system and respiratory system. Without that kind of systems, we could access an individual. And the individual that gather will form a population or a collection of a group of similar organisms in the same place and time. The population will make a community, which is a collection of population of various species at the same time and the same place. Like we gather in a school, we will have several types of persons that gather at the same time and in the same place. The next is ecosystem, which is interaction between the various populations that make up a community and its abiotic environment, like water, air, soil, and sunlight. The ecosystem will form biome. which are a collection of terrestrial ecosystems that cover large areas that are generally affected by regional climate, so that there are unique plants, animals that are able to adapt to their environment. And the last is the biosphere, the Earth, which contains all life. At this level, all life on the Earth forms a unified whole whose interactions are on a global scale. In this part, we will learn about the branches of biology. As I mentioned before, that biology is a knowledge that we learn about living things and life related to living things. So there will be a broad discussion about the biology. Therefore, there is some branches of biology that specifically learn about specific part of biology. The first is taxonomy. It is the study of grouping of organisms based on similarities and differences. Next, there is virology, which study about the virus. Microbiology, it is study about microorganisms like bacteria. And the mycology is a study about mushroom, yeast, and mold. There is also botany. It will study about the plantae. There is pteridology, which study about Pteridophyta. Bryology, which study about the Bryophyta. Zoology, which study about the Animalia. There is entomology, which study about insects. Herpetology, it study about reptiles and amphibians. Ornithology, study of apes. Mammalogy, study of mammals. Developmental biology is study about the development of individual organisms. Embryology, study about embryonic development. Anatomy, the study of internal structure of an organism. The physiology, study of function that occur in the life of an organism. Biochemistry is a study of chemical process in living things, such as how the glycolysis happens, how the fat is burned. And the next, there is biophysics, which study the physical process in living things. And biotechnology is the study of examines technologies that utilize living organisms. There is also paleontology. It is a study of the development of history of life based on the fossil and record. Actually, there are many branches of biology that I couldn't cover here, so you can find it by yourself and try to encourage yourself to know more about the biology. This would be our last subtopic for discussion today. The scientific method. So basically, what is scientific method? Do you know what is it? Scientific method is a step that is carried out sequentially and systematically to gain knowledge. In biology, it's very supportive. Why? Because in its application, the science of biology also recognizes practical work to get a conclusion. Therefore, with the scientific method, a practical work can be carried out in a structured and directed manner. In biology, we could not just conclude by our assumption. We have to conduct a research, analysis, and then we have to know what happened. What's happened in this type of reaction, for example. And then we have to analyze. After we analyze, we will get a result and we will discuss about that in the literature review, and then we have to conclude. Then that's called the scientific method. We could not conclude something just by our assumption. As I mentioned before, basically scientific method is we are not allowed to assume something just by our assumption without conduct a research or without a scientific things that we have to do. Basically, these 6 things is explained about what is scientific method, and you could look at the cycle over there to show how we gonna throw out all the things until we conclude something. Basically, for doing a research or to conclude something that you want to prove based on the scientific method, we will use laboratory instead of just searching in internet. Therefore, we have to know the safety during we are in the laboratory. There are some things you have to note. The first is we must know the laboratory equipment, chemicals, and their use. The second, we need to understand the hazardous chemicals and also the safety symbols. The third, we need to comply with the instructions or working procedures in the laboratory. The fourth is we have to know the source of the accident and how to overcome with the accident. Basically, you can get all the things from the protocol and MSDS, or known as Material Safety Data Sheet. Before enter the lab, you have to know the protocol and also the MSDS. When working with the chemicals, we have to note several things. All chemicals must be given special signs labeled, and the information required includes the material name and date of manufacture, amount of the contents, the material origin, like brand or other things that could explain the origin of the materials. The fourth is the possible hazard levels, like is it poisonous, is it corrosive, or is it irritate something. And the fifth is the necessary information, such as the percentage, like sodium hydroxide 5%, alcohol 70%, and then the chemical symbol. As I mentioned before, this is the example of chemical sign in the laboratory that you will find. This is an irritation code XN and the corrosive chemicals code C. For example, sulfuric acid, chloric acid, potassium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide, ammonium, etc. There is also information to know how to deal or how to overcome with the chemical, such as avoid breathing, inhalation, skin, and eye contact. And then how you overcome if you do something that is prohibited. If it's exposed to yourself, dilute with the running water, use a mask, gloves, do not add water to acid, but on the contrary, little by little. Work on special ventilation. Those is the example of how we need to know the information regarding chemicals and all the laboratory stuff. The next example is the toxic chemicals or TCO. This is just a little admission to the body causes death or severe illness. Avoid contact with the body, work on spatial ventilation. This information provides for us to know how to work with these kinds of chemicals. What is the example of toxic chemicals? Like benzene, carbonyl ion, chlorine, cyanide acid, and etc. This is the picture of flammable chemicals. For handling flammable chemicals, we need to avoid contact with the direct air and sources of ignition. We need to work on a spatial ventilation. And there are some information provided for certain chemicals like flammable in a flash point 22 up to 26 degrees Celsius. The second, highly flammable, which has flash point below 22 degrees Celsius, like acetone and ether. This is the picture of explosive chemicals. To handling these chemicals, we need to avoid collisions, frictions, fire jumps, and heat. What is the example of these chemicals? Hydrocarbons, acetone, alkali metals, and sulfuric acid. As you can see in the picture, you can read it is oxidizing. For handling oxidizing chemicals, we need to avoid heat and easy ingredients that can burn and reducing agent. Do not return the remaining chemicals to the original bottle. Do not put the bottle in water because it can cause an explosion. This material should not come into contact with the fire or electric spark. For the practical guideline, or as I mentioned before, it is a protocol. Like 1, the practicum under the guidance of the teacher. 2, avoiding the danger posed by yourself. 3, comply with work safety regulation. 4, before doing a practicum, study the material and how it works. And those are what the function of protocols. The 5 is practicum in earnest, thorough, careful, listening to the teacher's explanation. 6, all ingredients are considered dangerous so that you can be careful for every chemical. But don't forget, every chemical has its own characteristic. But the main important things is you need to be careful to handling everything, even it's not dangerous as the dead or toxical chemicals. 7, the slightest accident reported to the teacher so that can be quickly handled. We never expect an accident happen, but we have to be prepared if there is accident. This is the emergency accident handlers. First, students do not block the entrance and exit of the laboratory. Bags are placed in the designated places. 2. Sharp wound due to sharp objects. Clean the wound. If there is a broken glass, use tweezers and sterile gauze. Then apply the wound. 3. For acidic chemicals, clean with a cotton swab, rinse with running water, wash with 1% of Na2CO2, dry and rub with the ointment. The 4th, if basic chemicals, we have to wash with the running water, rinse with 1% acetic acid, wash again and dry. 5. burns due to heat. If the fire is deep in ice, immediately. When the red skin is rubbed with the fish oil ointment or Levoltran. The 6. Microbial effects. We need to avoid for students who are sensitive. The tool is wrapped in a filter paper dropped with formalin. In order to prevent any accident or any exposure from the chemicals, we need to use safety equipment at the laboratory, or known as PPE, personal protective equipment. We know that we need a practicum suit, mask, gloves, eye protection or goggles, respirators or steam cabinets, or known as fume hood. In the laboratory, we need to use safety shoes. We are not allowed to use an open upside of the shoes like a flat shoes. And then there is a fire extinguisher, eye wash, an emergency shower, also the first aid box for handling the accident.
Okay, I think enough for the explanation. So it's time for your exercise. Please listen to the question. Number 1. How does biology perform its role in resolving the COVID-19 case which is now endemic in Indonesia? Question number 2. Please prepare a trial report according to the rules of the scientific method. Example of a simple report on the effect of soil salt and mineral on plant growth. Question number 3. What step will you take if there is a fire due to a chemical mixing error? Are you sure this step is effective?